You're listening to The Social Workers on WCDB Albany.
Welcome to The Social Workers on WCDB Albany. Welcome back. We are broadcasting from remote locations during the quarantine for COVID-19. My name is Eric Hardiman, and I'm here virtually with my co-host, my regular co-host, Alyssa Lotmore. Welcome back, Alyssa.
Hey, Eric. Great to be here.
It is great to be here. We are trying to keep our shows going and keep doing some interviews. And we've really been having some fascinating conversations with folks around the community related to the COVID-19 situation, related to the community response to that, related to how different populations and different folks are coping with this newfound situation that we're all finding ourselves in. So we're kind of in a listen and learn mode, but also trying to get some messages out and really try and do what we can and keep the airwaves full of interesting material, right?
That is true. And we have two very important guests today because they're going to talk about a topic that I don't really feel has been getting enough news attention, and that is how COVID-19 has impacted the foster care community. So with us today, we have Selena Snow. Selena is finishing her sophomore year at UAlbany, where she is majoring in psychology and minoring in social welfare. Selena has been in foster care since the age of 3 and is the vice president of the student organization Fostering Leaders of Our World. F.L.O.'s mission is to advocate for improved educational access for foster youth and to raise awareness on campus about the experiences of UAlbany students with foster care backgrounds and to provide peer support. Sarah Mountz is an assistant professor at UAlbany's School of Social Welfare, where she teaches courses in participatory action research, human behavior and the social environment, and trauma-informed child welfare practice. Dr. Mountz's research focuses on the experiences of systems involved LGBTQ youth and the educational experiences of foster care alumni. She is especially interested in youth organizing and activism. Welcome, Selena and Sarah. Thanks for being on today.
Thank you for having us.
So let's just start off. Sarah, I have a question for you, and Selena, feel free to jump in at any point. Sarah, you're the faculty advisor for the UAlbany student group F.L.O.W. And can you tell us a little bit more about this group and why it started?
Absolutely. And Selena, please feel free to jump in at any point. I'm actually one of 2 faculty advisors. The second advisor is Angelique Johnson, who's a counselor with UAlbany's EOP, Educational Opportunity Program. And F.L.O.W. was a student group that was formed as one of several offshoots from an ongoing participatory action research project that was started as a collaboration between the School of Social Welfare and the EOP program. So PAR is a kind of research that collaborates with communities to engage in research in a way that where the community most impacted by the research is helping to design and carry out the research. And so we were initially looking to gather more information about the experiences of students at UAlbany with foster care backgrounds and what sort of needs they were having and what sort of adversities and opportunities they faced educationally in order to ideally create more foster care affirming policies and programming at UAlbany. So F.L.O.W. is a group, as you said, of UAlbany students with foster care backgrounds and their allies. And their mission is to raise awareness on campus and elsewhere about the experiences of college students with foster care backgrounds, to promote access to higher education for younger foster youth, only 3% of whom graduate from college, and only 50% of whom graduate with high school diplomas. So there are a lot of issues around educational justice for youth with foster care backgrounds. And their third mission is to provide a safe space and peer support among foster youth on campus. And since Selena is the vice president of the group, I'll let her tell you more about some of the kind of concrete activities and campaigns and amazing work that they've done over the course of the last year or so.
Hi, so I am the Vice President of F.L.O.W, and over the past year or so, F.L.O.W has been very active. We just finally started our student organization, and we primarily started it because we found that being in a group with more foster youth, that we found more people to identify with. Because as someone who comes from a foster care background, it is very difficult to function normally, in a sense that it's hard to explain to people why you're feeling this way, or, why you might get depression out of nowhere. And it's very hard to find people to relate to that have no understanding about your background. So F.L.O.W was created specifically to bring foster youth together so that we have like a safe place that we can talk to one another and we can relate with one another. And so that we can form healthy relationships with people that are similar to us, so that we can help each other and build each other up so that we can all become successful in the end. So in order for us to do that, we started having weekly meetings for everyone in F.L.O.W, and even bringing outside people into the meetings as well, students that do not have a foster care background, in order to educate them on what it's like to be in foster care, what it's like to have to go through the aging out process, and also about like the emotional trauma and physical trauma that comes along with being in foster care. So we've educated students on campus. We've had seminars and things of the like. And we have also done fundraisers in order to raise awareness about the issue as well. And F.L.O.W has also gone to Advocacy Day to talk to the Senate about some of the issues that foster students face, like not having appropriate housing, especially during the school breaks. Not everyone has a place to go home to. And it makes it very difficult because every semester, whenever it ends, it's very difficult to find a place to stay. And if you do find a place to stay, it's like sometimes you're not financially stable. So we brought up those issues to the Senate, and thankfully, through a couple services like FISA, I'm sure Sarah will talk a little more about that later, but they have been able to recognize what has been going on and help foster youth at the University at Albany. So F.L.O.W has been very active for the past year. We've even gone to some different group homes to speak to the youth who may be going to college in the future, to let them know what kind of services are made aware to them. Because me personally, before I came to college, I was not aware of the EOP program. So I was not able to apply for it or even get into it. So there were a lot of services that I should have been able to take a hold of, but because I was not aware of it, I personally could not receive the same type of benefits as other students. So we go to different group homes and meet with different students and let them know what kind of services are available to them so that they can be more successful in their life throughout college. So those are some of the things that F.L.O.W has done within the past year.
So it's really incredible to hear you talk about all these things, Selena. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your, what you've learned from this experience, because it really strikes me listening to you that that you sort of, to me at least, what I'm hearing is that you embody this notion of coming to an institution of higher learning like UAlbany and learning beyond the classroom. And what I mean by that is, certainly you learn from your courses that you take, but that it sounds to me like, and I'd like to hear it from your perspective, obviously, but it sounds to me like you are learning so much about how to influence policy, how to use your own lived experience to role model for others who may be considering higher education, how to become a leader amongst your peers. And there's just so many layers to your learning experience that I think others may not typically think of when they think of higher education. And so I just hear all this incredible learning opportunity. So I'd love to hear you talk about that a little bit.
Yes. So apart from learning like my academics, what being in this situation, going to college has taught me is that even though I myself might not receive all of the benefits that come from advocating, because, by time policies do change, like I would not have received those benefits. But I feel like it is very important because I know that the people coming after me, that they will have a better chance to be able to be more successful. So I really feel like I learned how to be selfless in a sense. And I learned that that there's a bigger picture, it's not always just about me, but it's for like the thousands of other kids that have a really hard time being successful. Because like I think Sarah mentioned already that not a lot of foster youth graduate from college, only about 3%. So in order to benefit others and to make sure that we're all successful, I feel like this was very important to learn how to influence other people, to want to do better for the common good, and also to advocate and like raise awareness, because the problem is that a lot of people aren't even aware that like foster care is even a thing, or that that there are issues within the foster care system, especially whenever it comes to higher education. A lot of financial aid advisors don't understand the situation. They don't know how to help foster youth. So educating them and educating our professors on, certain topics, because sometimes professors, they even say things that are they can be triggersome. For example, I myself had a personal issue with a professor that gave out kind of like a reading for us to do in class. And it talked about how foster youth turn out to be criminals. And so that kind of stuff can be triggersome, and especially triggered me because everyone in my class was very aware that I was in foster care, and it was just very uncomfortable. So educating professors about, things that they should say, things that they shouldn't say, it will benefit those that are coming after me. So I just learned that sometimes, like, I will have to take the burden, but at least someone else will not have to go through the same things that I did. So that's really what I learned from this entire experience.
No, this whole group seems to be helpful. It seems to, as Eric was saying, and you were just saying, provide skills, help pave the way, help make the university setting a better place. But is this a common group on all universities, or is it only unique to some? Because it seems like it should be, there are individuals who have been in the foster care system or currently are in the foster care system in all colleges and universities. So is this something that is common to all university settings?
So actually, groups for foster youth is not a common thing. I have actually never heard of any club on any other campus that does the same thing that we do. And even whenever we brought this up to like the senators and people that are in those kinds of positions, like they were actually very surprised because they themselves have never heard of a group that was specifically made for foster youth. And that's why I feel like this group is so unique, because I think that if I would have went to a different school and I wouldn't have, had people reach out to me and put me in first the research project that allowed me to meet these people, I don't think that there would have ever been a group that was formed. And I don't think that I would have been as successful as I am. Because sometimes it's, especially for foster youth, it's very difficult to like continue to go on after so much like retention from all of like the weight that you're carrying on your shoulders builds up. And I think that this group has specifically helped people to be able to let go of that tension a little bit so that they continue to go on. But a lot of other colleges, they don't have that. So, there's not a high success rate for foster youth that do not have a group like this. So I definitely feel like colleges should have a group specifically for foster youth, because even on like many campuses, like there's a group for pretty much everybody else. There's a group for African Americans, Latinos, LGBTQ, every type of group that you could possibly think of. But whenever it comes to foster youth, it's like there's nothing to be found. So I feel like that definitely every college should consider it, and they should put it into practice so that everyone on their campus has a chance to be successful and has someone to relate to.
This just seems like groundbreaking work that you're doing, and I hope it doesn't seem like work all the time, but it sounds like it's also providing a positive support for you personally. But it just sounds like an incredible learning opportunity, an incredible service and support opportunity for other students, and certainly for the university community as well, to teach the rest of us within the university community about the needs of these particular students. Sarah, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about you mentioned the 3% graduation rate for foster folks that have been in students that have been in foster care. Can you talk a little bit about that and sort of maybe, for our listeners, talk about what some of the common challenges are and obstacles faced?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something that we focused on within the research group that we ended up designing and carrying out a focus group with students on campus with foster care backgrounds. And what they said was really consistent with, mirrored other research that doesn't involve foster youth in a participatory way. But some of the adversities that youth experience are having to change schools a lot, right? Because they have multiple placements as they move through the foster care system. And every time you change schools, there may be a different curriculum or just, a change in social setting makes it hard to have sort of the kind of educational continuity that allows you to finish your courses or accrue credits. So that's one thing. Not having continuous family support can make it hard to stay motivated or even physically get to school sometimes. As someone with a foster care background, there's something I've heard a lot is stigma, right? So being in the foster care system, often for youth who are in the system, carries an experience of stigma that makes it hard to connect with peers, or teachers and administrators may or may not be aware of the fact that you're in the foster care system, and so folks are afraid of being treated differently. There's a lot of, people are in the foster care system for a reason. Most commonly, it's because of parental substance abuse or mental health issues. And so there's often, an early experience of one, trauma related to neglect or abuse, and then also the trauma or emotional strain of being removed from your family of origin, and then the experience of being in the foster care system itself. Many people experience as traumatic as well. And so when you're carrying around all of these, experiences of complex trauma, it can make it really hard to learn. And unfortunately, our schools are not, many of them, at a place of being trauma informed in a way that would be affirming of the experiences of youth with foster care backgrounds. So those are some of the barriers I've heard youth express at the K through 12 level and that have been documented by research. And then in terms of getting to college, a lot of times, navigating application processes, navigating financial aid applications are really challenging experiences. And if you don't have someone to support you or to help you navigate that process, you may be less likely to carry it out or even know how to navigate it. And additionally, you may, a lot of times, foster youth aren't thinking about themselves as being able to attend college, which is why the work that F.L.O.W is doing is so powerful, going out there and role modeling for younger youth in foster care, that they can go to college. So not seeing it as a possibility, maybe not having a caseworker who knows of resources to help connect you to college. I think all those things compound to make college hard to access in the first place. And then retention is a second barrier. So Selena talked about, having to move housing a lot of times during the academic year, not having places to go during breaks. A lot of times there's food insecurity and financial strain despite financial aid packages that foster youth receive. And so that all adds added stress to the experience of being in college as someone with a foster care background. I often hear of students having to work 2 or 3 jobs while going to college to kind of make ends meet, to pay their phone bills, etc. So I think those are some of, the things that have been documented by research, that came up in our research, that I've heard anecdotally youth talk about. But Selena, do you want to add anything based on your own personal experience or things that you've heard your peers share about some of the challenges educationally?
So definitely it is very challenging as foster youth to pursue a higher education, especially because even in high school, a lot of foster youth, they have to move many times, as Sarah mentioned. I personally moved a couple times throughout my high school career. I was actually born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. but during my freshman year, I was displaced from my home and I was sent to go to school in Las Vegas. And after that, I only got to stay there for a couple months because my foster family was not found to be fit to take care of me anymore. And they sent me to New York. And so I moved from 3 different educational systems in 3 different states. And so the educational system in Las Vegas is completely different from the education that I am receiving and that I received in New York. So when I came in my, like the middle of my sophomore year to New York, I had to make up like every Regents I could possibly think of because there is no such thing as Regents in Las Vegas. So it was very difficult to catch up on all the work and to catch up on the curriculum. And then on top of that, even after I finally moved to New York and started living in kinship care, my family just kind of left me here and they moved to North Carolina. So then I was put into a group home. So I moved several times throughout my high school life and I was forced to just kind of go with it and try to keep getting good grades. But it's just very hard to stay on top of everything that you're supposed to do whenever, you know, you move so many times and there's no time to adjust. And then even after that, I finally got into college and my social workers weren't very supportive of me. I didn't have anyone here. I wasn't not native born to New York, so I had no friends, no family. I only had my social worker to rely on. And when I went to college, she was not helpful at all. Even like my move-in day. My move-in day, she was supposed to help me move all my things into the 20th floor of the tower. And instead of doing that, she parked in the parking lot and made me carry every single thing all the way across the parking lot to the other side of campus, all by myself, multiple trips. And even then, she didn't even give me the things that I needed as my basic necessities. I didn't have a blanket, I didn't have pillows, I didn't have sheets, and I didn't have any money to buy for myself. So it was like I was constantly moved, finally got into college, and then even the people that were supposed to support me would not support me. And then it was even more difficult to go back and forth during breaks, go back to the group home, because they were supposed to buy my tickets back home, and they would never buy my ticket back home. And this is something that not just myself has gone through, but a lot of foster youth go through it too. There are things that should be provided while we're in college, but our social workers and the people that are supposed to support us do not actually provide them for us. And then even over the past summer, I decided that I was going to stay on campus in the summertime to take some classes. And my group home told me that that was fine. My social worker told me that that's okay. And then all of a sudden, they just discharged me. They said that I can't come back to the group home because I didn't come back during the summer. So they left me without anything. I just had to figure out what I was going to do and where I was going to go because I decided that I wanted to take more classes in the summer. So this is something that happens a lot, not just to myself, but even to other foster youth, being constantly displaced, not having the proper support that we're supposed to have, and then also being discharged without even being told. It's happened to not only me, but other foster youth that I know on campus as well. So there are a lot of issues that takes place in the higher education, and it makes it even harder to just do your work. Because at the end of the day, we all go to college just so that we can get good grades, so that we can learn new things, and so that we can become successful. But it's even harder to do that when you don't even have a stable place to live, you don't have any money, and you don't know where you're going to go during breaks. So that's just something that factors into how difficult it is to finally become successful and just graduate college.
It's an incredible story of resilience. And, you know, I know it's, it sounds like you've had some experience talking about your own personal life experience, and you've done just such a wonderfully articulate job of doing so here. And it's really, I just want to really thank you for that story and for sharing your experience, because it's really powerful as a listener to hear it. And I hope our audience, will have some inspiration from your words and really start to think a little bit differently about how we can support students like yourself. And it's really, it's a powerful reminder that people have a host of challenges that they face that we don't always see. And certainly as faculty members and instructors and admin staff at the university, sometimes we put all students in the same category and don't think about the life experiences and the life challenges and adversities that someone may face. So I just really want to personally thank you for that.
And as we talked a lot about these challenges that are just basic everyday challenges as someone is trying to navigate through the higher ed system as a foster care youth, COVID-19 has even made so many more complications. And how has this whole pandemic, as people are forced to leave campuses, find their own housing, find their own food, how has this pandemic change, it really impacted the foster care community, especially those in higher education?
Well, as I already spoke of before, displacement is like a huge issue among foster youth, and definitely COVID-19 made that a lot worse. As most students rely solely on campus housing throughout the entire year as their place to stay, and like how they'll be fed is through like campus dining. So the fact that a lot of colleges' campus have closed and have not allowed people to stay there, a lot of youth across the United States, they're at risk of being homeless. So that's a huge issue. Thankfully, UAlbany has allowed foster youth to stay on campus so that they have somewhere to stay. But there are also foster youth that are about to graduate, but they've also aged out of care. So now that raises a whole nother problem because they're about to graduate, they're also aged out of care. And at this time, during COVID-19, there aren't a lot of places that are showing houses. So where are they going to stay if they move off campus? So right now, there's a lot of fear about displacement and homelessness among the foster youth community. And it's also very difficult for a lot of foster youth in Albany in general, because most of them come from the city and their medical insurance doesn't work up here. So if they were to get sick, I'm not really sure exactly how they would receive care. So there's not adequate healthcare, there's not adequate housing, and even transportation is difficult. It's like a lot of foster youth, well, I'm pretty sure all the foster youth have been laid off from their jobs. I personally was working 3 jobs and I got fired from every single one of them. So it's difficult not having any income coming in to be able to safely get from one place to another to buy yourself groceries or to buy yourself food. There's no income. And even just to buy yourself a face mask, it's very difficult wanting to get on the bus where you're going to have to be in close contact with people and not even have the adequate materials to protect yourself. So it's just a lot of fear. And also among foster youth who were relying on like the school system, like a lot of them were relying on the campus library to be able to do their homework, to be able to do their schoolwork because they themselves could not afford a laptop. And the fact that a lot of like campuses have closed or even closed their libraries, like students aren't even able to access like the basic necessities that they need just to be able to do their schoolwork and to finish the semester strong. So I feel like that is really a big issue because now that's affecting like how students are going to learn. And thankfully, colleges, especially UAlbany, has allowed an SU option for classes. But the only thing is that if you choose to SU all your classes, that it may affect your financial aid. So it's kind of like a lose-lose situation. You fail your classes and then you lose your financial aid, which students were relying on in order to pay off their entire tuition and even their housing so that they could live here, which in turn would make students probably want to drop out of college. So this is just adding a lot of extra stress on a lot of foster youth. And I feel like there should be more steps put in place to help foster youth so that they don't have to worry as much. Like there should be computers that should be provided. There should be cleaning supplies. There should be face masks that are provided. And most importantly, like foster youth need some type of income to be able to sustain themselves. So that's how COVID-19 has been affecting foster youth.
If I could just add to all of the wonderful information that Selena just provided, I think as with other injustices and disparities and fault lines that the pandemic has revealed, I think that this is really illuminating some of the educational disparities experienced by foster youth. So, under non-pandemic circumstances, housing insecurity and food insecurity are issues for college students with foster care backgrounds. They're even more so right now. The digital divide and access to technology that Selena mentioned, always an issue for foster youth, but with a move to remote learning, particularly pronounced right now. I do want to say that thankfully, the SUNY system has been able to secure some laptops that can be accessed by youth with foster care backgrounds. But everything, is a process in terms of gaining access, and the move to remote learning was immediate. And then just the aging out experience that Selena mentioned. Under non-pandemic circumstances, 2/5 of youth who age out of the foster care system experience homelessness, and only half are employed by the age of 24. So now under pandemic circumstances, you have less housing available. You have a really terrible, economic situation, uncertainty about jobs. So we have students who now have, against all odds, become part of the 3% of youth with foster care backgrounds who graduate from college, who are concerned about where they're going to go in a couple of weeks with their college degree in hand. And that's, I personally hold the perspective that these are some of our finest students to have been so resourceful, so resilient, to have completed college, against all these barriers. They just deserve so much more than to be worrying right now about, where they're going to sleep when they graduate from college. And these include some of our very own students at UAlbany.
Absolutely. I think that's really well put, Sarah. So if you've just tuned in, we're listening to an interview with Sarah Mountz, who's an assistant professor at the University at Albany's School of Social Welfare, and Selena Snow, who is a student here at UAlbany, finishing up her sophomore year, where she's majoring in psychology and minoring in social welfare. Selena, I know you're only about halfway through your experience at UAlbany as an undergraduate, but I'm curious, and I certainly don't want to ask you to read into the future, but I'm curious, to hear about your sort of career aspirations and where you see yourself headed in the future.
Yeah, so when I first initially entered college, I originally started out as a bio major because I felt like I wanted to be like a doctor, because I thought that was my calling, to help people. But after experiencing a lot of the things that I've been through as a foster youth, and also being a part of F.L.O.W, and also the research project that Sarah created, I realized that I wanted to change my path, that that's not the way that I should help people. But I decided that I wanted to major in psychology and minor in social welfare, so that eventually I could get my master's in social work, so that I could go on to become a social worker and work predominantly with foster youth that are going through the same issues that I went through. Because a lot of social workers, they didn't come from a foster care background. So it's hard for them to know exactly how to help. But me, myself, since I already went through it, I can already help people who are going through it. So that's what I want to do in my future.
Great. We wish you the best of luck with that, and we'll be excited to welcome you to the master's program at UAlbany in the future.
Thank you.
Yes. And I want to just jump back to the ideas like aging out of foster care, especially as students are getting ready to graduate. Are there any interventions currently being done at state levels to assist youth in foster care, especially those who are about to age out of care? I believe I've read a few articles, or I saw some of the headlines of possibly delaying, some states might be delaying when individuals are aging out of foster care during this time. I don't know really more details or what is happening in New York State.
Yeah, that's a great question. So there are currently 4 states that I'm aware of so far who have made the decision to guarantee extended foster care to young people who are turning 21 in the midst of the pandemic. So there's still different ages at which youth age out of foster care. Some states it's 21, some states it's still 18. But Illinois, Rhode Island, California, and most recently Ohio have committed to allowing youth to stay in foster care if they want to, so that they're not aging out in the midst of the pandemic. Advocacy groups in New York have been asking for a delayed age out until at least 6 months after social distancing guidelines have been lifted, but there's been no legislative response yet. I think part of that may have to do with the fact that most states' extended foster care relies in large part on federal funds. So at the federal level, advocates have been asking for an increase in CHAFE funds So the Congressional Caucus on Foster Youth and advocacy groups like Foster Club have been asking for temporary supplemental funding for the John H. Chafee Foster Care Program for Successful Transition to Adulthood, which supports foster youth age 14 to 21 and up to 23 in states that have extended care. And also for increased funding and flexibility around Chafee ETV, which is the educational and training voucher that is part of the financial aid package that foster youth receive. So I don't know where New York State has not officially announced that they're extending foster care, but there is pressure being put on New York, and I hope that they will respond because we do have a large foster youth population. And this is not a state sponsored service, but there's an advocacy group called the Foster Youth Success Alliance, which is a coalition of different organizations and sponsored by the Children's Aid Society, which has been holding bi-weekly town halls virtually for foster youth in college to provide resources and peer support. A lot of the resources that are available are, because they're a New York City based advocacy group, are more applicable to youth in New York City. And so we're seeing a need for more kind of emergency funds and support for youth upstate. So those are the things that I'm aware of so far. Selena, I'm not sure if you have anything you want to add.
No, not on this topic.
Okay.
Well, it just shows, I mean, here at UAlbany, we have the F.L.O.W group, and how much of a resource this has been for students, you know, to have a group where they can talk to each other, especially during this time, and have faculty advisors who know what is maybe going on with the state policies. To have a group like this at a time like this seems to be something that is really invaluable.
We hope so. I do want to say, well, this group is completely, I know of no other campus that has a completely peer-led and peer-supportive group such as Fostering Leaders of Our World. I do know that a lot of states, or at least, you know, a dozen or so states, have comprehensive campus-based support programs. So I myself came from the Cal State system. And in California and in other states such as Michigan, the public university systems throughout their 2-year, 4-year, and community college systems have campus-based support programs that are fully, that receive funding and provide things like comprehensive case management, academic support, support and knowledge and information and resources around aging out. So a lot of youth foster youth who make it to college are aging out either while they're in college or immediately after. And so that's something I would love to see New York State implement. They've been proven to be really successful in improving retention of college students with foster care backgrounds. And it's just not a place that we're at yet as a state. I know that the CUNY system has some of these programs that they've just implemented in the last year or two, but the SUNY system doesn't have them yet. So in terms of thinking longer term, I think, you know, continuing to support youth organizing and activism and groups like F.L.O.W is absolutely essential, and also creating funded programming on campus. Like the Guardian and Resilient Scholars program in California would be essentially year-round and in non-pandemic circumstances. But I think that this crisis has really illuminated how important programming like that is.
No, I agree with you. And I want to thank you guys so much for coming on today, because this foster care in the higher education system is a topic that we could have talked about as a segment today on its own. And then when you throw in a pandemic on top of that, it's a time where we really need to bring issues like this to a higher attention. Because Selena, as you were going through and explaining your experience and all of these extra barriers that individuals might not even realize are occurring. I think your story and Sarah, the information that you've brought about with statistics and how the work that you're doing, it shows that this is a group and an area that more universities need to bring attention to, and how we can each advocate to make changes at a systematic level to make this process not so many barriers to having students find success.
Yeah, I'd like to reiterate that and just thank you both for your leadership, both at the faculty level and most importantly at the student level. Selena, your peer leadership amongst the student body is just really incredible, and the work you're doing with this student group is so important. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for being our guest today.
Much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having us. We appreciate attention to this community and to F.L.O.'s work.
So you've been listening to the Social Workers live radio talk show on WCDB Albany. My name's Eric Hardiman, and I've been here with Alyssa Lotmore, my co-host, and we've been talking with Selena Snow and Sarah Mountz, both from the University at Albany. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll be back soon.
You're listening to The Social Workers on WCDB Albany.